Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, patriots all over our country that is under God, welcome to tonight's Red America First Town Hall, the nation's most engaging platform where we the people run the show. Red for the blood of Christ, America First, policies and candidates. I'm your host and guest, Brett Wallace, resiliency peer leader with Red America First. So unfortunately, Valerie and Ashley are on travel and won't be able to make it tonight, so I'll be hosting this event. For 4 years, we stood as a beacon of unity and strength, draped in the symbolic red of our conviction, dedicated to America First policies and the Christian values that our nation was founded on. Here we gather not just to discuss, but to act, empowering our community through education, engagement, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Town Hall is igniting the conversations that matter. We are at the forefront of a movement to ensure a free, prosperous, and vibrant future for all Americans. I'm excited to introduce the Resiliency Pillar, our newest podcast show, The Resilient Path. Ultimately, RAF is building a national team, which encompasses education, training, and supporting Americans in an emergency. For example, Hurricane Helene, which was only a little over a year ago. We shall strive to be self-reliant and not rely on the government. This pillar is led by me, Brett Wallace. But first, let's go over some future episodes really quick. Next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be sharing the recent CIA declassified Biden family Ukraine cover-up with Mike McCormick, a White House stenographer with insight into Biden's shady dealings. This will be a must-watch for our Patriot audience, demanding truth and accountability. November 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, in an era where our nation's sovereignty and the safety of our families hang in the balance, few voices cut through the noise with the clarity and conviction like Christy Hutcherson. As the founder and CEO of Women Fighting for America, a frontline organization launched in 2020 to rally women in restoring biblical truths, constitutional values, and unyielding patriotism, Christie has spent years exposing threats to our children's future, from human trafficking rings to the erosion of American freedoms. Today, as whispers of coordinated disruptions and potential attacks loom on the horizon for December, we're honored to have Christie join us for an urgent conversation. Also, we invite you to join hashtag Pastor's Point this coming Monday. They will be continuing with chapter 6 of the book of Revelations, which depicts the opening of the first 6 seals of a scroll by the Lamb, we know as Jesus Christ, unleashing the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and other events signaling divine judgment, including conquest, war, famine, death, martyrdom, and cosmic upheaval, setting the stage for God's wrath and the end times. Pastor's Point's goal is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and grow in the knowledge of the Word of God and encourage all to adhere to biblical principles. All right, we need some support from our viewers and those who have the will to help. Our team relies on the support of our viewers and donors. We appreciate the help. Even $20 could help us in our national mission. Visit givesendgo.com/RedAmericaFirst/donate. Again, that's givesendgo.com/RedAmericaFirst/donate. I know you wrote that down. For those joining the live stream, we're looking to grow our live panel. Panel members engage directly with guests like Dr. Peter McCullough and Dinesh D'Souza. They participate in the famous state-to-state Intel round. Sign up at redamericafirst.com. Add your state and let us know that you want to be a panel member. Everyone, let's start with prayer. Let us bow our heads as we go to our Creator. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the many blessings you have given to us, including this time that we can come together virtually from all across this nation to discuss the furtherance of your kingdom, especially in the realm of governance. We ask that the Holy Spirit be with us this evening and give us eyes to see and ears to hear, and to fill us with a heart of compassion to serve you by helping our neighbors. We ask for your forgiveness of our shortcomings, just as we forgive others. In Messiah Yeshua, Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. Now we have what I consider a special treat. My loving wife, Emily, will be singing the national anthem. And she'll be doing it from off screen because we're going to be displaying the flag. We're going to focus on the flag while she's singing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, where so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free, the home of the brave.
Thank you very much, Emily. Now, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Wow, I really like that preamble. That's a great way to start these shows. All right, let me just take a quick look and see who all is here before we get started. Oh, we got a lot more than we had before we started. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. If you're coming in late, you might be surprised to see I am your host and guest of tonight's show. So Valerie and Ashley are on travel and they won't be able to make it tonight. But with that, let me turn it over to our guest, Brett Wallace. Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm going to start with this resiliency pillar. And instead of starting off with our mission, vision, goals, laying it all out, I'm going to save that for another episode. What I want to do tonight is talk about what I did to help in North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee after Hurricane Helene. I think it'll be a good way for you to get to know me, and then we can start talking about some of the more mundane stuff. And well, it's not mundane. Where we want to go with this is really exciting to me. Um, but anyway, that's where we're going to go. We're not going to talk a lot about the resiliency pillar. We're going to talk about my experiences and let you get to know me. And one way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start off with a video I put together of pictures and videos that members of Grindstone Ministries took during our disaster recovery up in Eastern Tennessee and North Carolina. This will give you a way to kind of get the feel for it. There's no way that what you see when you're on the ground is so much more than these pictures can convey. But anyway, it's a start. Here we go. Well, you can see the team from Grindstone just went in and started doing the work. There were a few military helicopters, but not many. There's the civilian helicopters. People brought their own helicopters in to help with the relief effort. And then the church we were at, they had a donation area. And here's our members. A lot of them were veterans. So you can see if you're used to the military life, lining up and being information. So Grindstone Ministries is the disaster relief organization. Cherry Grove Baptist Church were the ones that were hosting and feeding us. And the American Readout Radio Operator Network was who I was working for in the communications.
Location. Somebody asked where it was.
Okay. And we're getting text. Where was this at? Where were you when you took the photos? So all of those from the video were from people that were on site helping. They were uploaded to a Google Share account. And well, I just pulled the ones that I wanted for the video, but it's in Eastern Tennessee and North Carolina. Okay. So even though we didn't have the sound, that's not really the point. The point was to see the devastation, the vehicles, the houses that were moved from the stand, the pad. And we'll look more as we get into the slide deck, but that was just to give you a feel for what it was like driving through there and being on site. I'm going to move over to the slide deck, and there's no audio with this. Let me try that again. Share. Slide deck. Play. See, it's easy. All right, continue to share because I'm using an Apple. It's even got more stuff to mess with. Maybe that's why
You can see that.
you're not seeing the slide
Yes,
deck.
it is.
Okay. All right. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Read America First, the Resiliency Pillar. So this is a talk about Hurricane Helene. And this is the overview of tonight's discussion. We'll spend the next 30 minutes looking at a disaster recovery operation in Eastern Tennessee and Northwestern North Carolina after Hurricane Helene in 2024. This is through my eyes. So it's not that this is the best way, the right way. There was so many people out there helping. And this is just simply from my perspective in this one snapshot in time. This is a story of neighbors helping neighbors. And my biggest takeaway from this experience is planning assumption number one has to be no one is coming to save you. If we work on being self-reliant, then we will be resilient and we won't need anybody's help. Well, that's not always going to be possible, but if you get help, then it's a bonus. But if you plan for the worst case scenario that no one's coming to save you, then you're going to be all right. The only one to come to save you is Jesus. Just remember that. I'm going to escape for a second and go small so I can minimize the pictures that are on my screen. And then I'm going to go back to we just stopped the screen sharing. Sorry about that. And I'm going to get back to the screen sharing. What was happening is all the pictures were in front of the type. And Mac is asking me, do I want to continue to share? Are we back? Okay. So you can take a moment and look over this. To summarize, I put pictures on it to make it easier to get an idea. I spent 23 years in Navy Special Operations. I've worked with military and government in over 20 countries doing training and even combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. After I retired from the Navy, I started working with the U.S. Navy Bureau of Medicine and Surgery in their disaster preparedness and emergency management program. And I would travel to our hospitals and clinics around the world looking at their emergency management programs and making sure that they're plugged into the communities. I still currently teach disaster preparedness emergency management in a medical setting, the public health emergency management course at the Defense Medical Readiness Training Institute and the U.S. Uniform Health Services University, USUS in Bethesda. And if you want to, well, we'll go over this more in depth later, but this isn't all about me, not at all. That just gives you who's talking to you. All right, the 5 W's. Who? Well, I supported Grindstone Ministries. What did what did I do? I provided communication support. Where is in Cherry Grove Baptist Church, and so many thanks to those people for opening up their home and allowing us to to use their church for those weeks. I was there from 12 to 24 October, and I was there to help the people in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. Now, I put an asterisk by when I was there because I was already scheduled to hike the Appalachian Trail. So my calendar was clear for this time. And I'll talk about it more in a second. But um, the hurricane had passed. There wasn't much damage where I was at. And I kept seeing the calls for help. So I had the choice, do I go on my own pleasure hike in the Appalachian or help the people in the Appalachian? And one of the proverbs that I turn to often is, in his heart a man makes his plan, but the Lord determines his steps. So in my heart, I'd already planned on the Appalachian, and the Lord led me there just in a different way than I was expecting. So there's a nice picture of the church. That's the next morning after I got there. Is a beautiful place. Again, thank you so much to Cherry Grove for opening up your doors to us. This is an overview of what happened before deploying. So the hurricane hit us on the 26th, I think, up in North Carolina, Tennessee. It was the next day. It had been downgraded to a tropical storm by the 27th, but the flooding was at a 100-year level. So not only did they experience some high winds, higher, they don't normally get hurricanes up there, but the flooding was incredible, and that's what really did the damage. In fact, mysteriously, some of the flooding went ahead of the storm. And then October 7th, I learned that there was a need for the ham radio volunteers to assist in Grindstone Ministries. I say GSM and Bear Independent because TJ has a podcast, Bear Independent, and this was organization that he started. Grindstone was a ministry that he started as an outreach from Bear Independent. And I'll talk more about those folks as we go on. So I arrived at Cherry Grove. We called it a forward operating base because a lot of the folks were military veterans, and we ran this like a military show. And in the video, you saw everybody lined up in muster. And I'm not sure other nonprofits or NGOs are as rank and file and locked on as we had this. It really helped out, I thought. And I would have deployed earlier if not for Hurricane Milton passing over our residences in Florida on the 9th. So after Hurricane Helene, I saw there was a need, but well, I can't just up and leave. We got another hurricane coming. So what I do when we have hurricanes, and we often have them in Florida, is I go with working with the county emergency operations center. I'll go to one of our shelters that we open up ahead of the storm, and I have radio equipment that we can call back to the emergency operations center if the internet and cell phone should go down. Last resort, emergency communication, but we have it, and that's one of the things that I do to volunteer and help out my community. And so fortunately, we didn't get hit too bad. You can see by the pictures that top center is the tree that fell right in front of my house in the road. And it kind of looks bad, but the truth is, it took about an hour, guys with chainsaws, to clear that up. Now, the bottom one is a picture of a power pole that's bent over right in front of my gate. So I couldn't get in and out of my house for a couple of days. We worked it out. We actually stayed in an Airbnb. But within a couple of days, they had the power lines up. And then on the right, you see, well, that's my neighbor's house with the Trump sign. And we learned that FEMA, at least in pockets, was guided to not help those um, that are on the same political side as we are. So I'm getting more involved with my community to make sure that never happens again in our location. And if everybody does that, then, well, little by little, we'll overcome that. Because these are our neighbors, and we need to be helping each other. And that's regardless of your political affiliation, your religion, or lack thereof. We need to share God's love with each other and do that by neighbors helping neighbors. These are representations of Hurricane Helene's path. On the left, pre-landfall, this is something that you might want to look up. I really like this app program. It's called Earth Null School, and it gives a great visual representation of the cyclones and hurricanes of the tropical storm weather throughout the globe. And well, I like to look at it, and you can see what it's doing. And I don't know, I prefer this to the radar, but um, it's just another tool for you to take a look at. This center one is the known victims. This is a really neat app that was started by the Latter-day Saints. It's now no longer run by the church, but it's its own nonprofit. And disaster relief organizations can get an account with this app and log in. So if you're a disaster relief organization and you do medical checks and you see that the folks need a tarp on their roof, you can put a red dot on this map. And then other groups looking at it say, oh, we do tarps, and they can take that dot and turn it from red to green. So there's no government involvement with the disaster relief now uh, using this app. We can just go in and take care of each other. And I'll share more about what my efforts are with our local community, but I'm getting very involved with this recently. On the right, we've got the free Starlink. Shout out to Elon Musk. Um, what he did, look at the swath. This nearly mirrors those red dots. And he said, you just put in your zip code and you'll get free internet access through Starlink. That was really, really amazing. And they were passing out Starlink devices left and right. I don't remember how many, but our organization, we had two that were donated. And that changed disaster response incredibly. It didn't negate the need for radio communication, but it sure helped in a lot of pockets. There you got a bird's eye view of the laydown area, and it was just incredible. The trucks coming in day and night full of donated goods. And I want to be clear, these are not grants or taxpayer funded items. These are all people, they would just, from their church, load up a semi and send it on its way. We had one young man, 20-year-old from Colorado, in his pickup truck and a trailer that his church loaded up, loaded to the hilt. His truck broke down 3 times on the way. He fixed it and he came out and he helped for another 2 weeks. He was unstoppable. And for me, I really liked seeing the age range, and we can get kind of, I don't know what the word is, bitter or negative looking at, oh, these younger generations, they don't work like we did. Well, the honest truth is, when, our parents said the same thing, but it restored my hope in the youth, seeing people like him come out and and help out with this. All right, so it says courtesy of the deployed drone team. As I mentioned, we ran this like a military op, and we had folks, veterans with all kinds of skill sets that were able to help out, and that was one of them. I labeled this, entitled it "The Winning Teams." Let me see where we're at, 9:34. We're good on time. The winning teams, we had recon teams that would go out and take a look. They would just drive kind of in the blind and go places. Oh, hey, we got this one, we got this one. These people need this. They'd come back and then we'd get a game plan of who to send out on the next trip. We had SAW teams, heavy equipment teams, hull teams, and medical teams. So the SAW team, this kind of goes without saying. The branches are down; they can't get in and out of their driveway, or it fell on top of their house. Um, and I'll show some more pictures of who was helping with that. The heavy equipment teams, the hull teams, you got to get the rubbish out of there, and the medical teams. One of the things that's often overlooked is the the chronic issues that people suffer from. They're not acute. The storm didn't like cause a gash in their head. They're not bleeding out and we need to put a tourniquet on their neck. It's not like that. But they've got diabetes is one of the ones that you see often. They run out of medication. Now this chronic issue that could be easily sustained now becomes an acute issue. They need transport. So getting our medical folks, doctors and nurses that volunteered with medication that was donated, get them what they need to get through this. Um, Diabetic wound care, for example, or even the gashes. They got cut while they were cleaning up, but in this condition where they don't have running water and you can't clean it, these things that you might ignore or just need a Band-Aid can now turn into festering wounds that require higher level medical care. So being able to intervene before it becomes a problem is very important. I want to talk about the teams, these skilled workers. So this one on the left, the government isn't going to contract somebody to rebuild that trailer. It's build back better. Why would you do that? Why would you do that is because these people in the Appalachians are not leaving their land. It's not only the Appalachians. This happens in a lot of disaster sites that people don't want to leave their home. And there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is looting. Another reason could be that there's issues with their title. I'm not going to talk about that on a recorded line, but what we enabled these folks is to stay on their property. And you see, they put up that canopy, donated the washer and dryer, donated the generator and the fuel to run the washer and dryer. and the people can live in that. Is it, I mean, it's habitable. Is it up to code? I don't know about that, but it'll get them by until there's another better solution. Rather than being trucked into the big cities, staying in an apartment, and waiting for the government funds to run out, and then what are you going to do? On the right, we see another skilled worker fixing the well, hooking up a well. That's not the sort of thing that the government's going to contract people to go to individual houses to be able to take care of issues like this. But these are really important things. Of course, we know how important water is. So being able to restore their well service is critically important to that family and probably families around them that also need water. Brother helping brother. And all that equipment you saw, the backhoes, front loaders, this guy's chainsaws and his skill set, you have to understand that these people left their job. He's not getting paid whatever state he came from. I don't know this man particularly, but well, obviously he's an arborist and he's not at home getting paid every day. He's over here helping people that he's never met with the equipment out of pocket. The tractors, the trailers that came, those are people that are contractors that are not working at home. They brought their equipment to help out. They're not getting reimbursed for this. There's no federal funds that are paying their per diem. This is to serve the Lord. It kind of, well, it made an impact on me. You can see that. And the communication support, think about these teams. You got chainsaw teams out there, and somebody gets cut with a chainsaw. That's a pretty critical injury. I mentioned they're veterans or they've got a preparedness mindset. Every one of our volunteers had their own in the military. We call it IFAC, individual first aid kit. Everybody had tourniquets on them. They had blood clotting bandages and had some training in how to do first aid. But with that, somebody gets cut with a chainsaw, they're going to need higher level care. How are they can't call an ambulance. You saw the ambulance in the video. The roads, you saw the roads, they're not getting to a hospital by road. So how do we manage that? We had teams, and this is why why TJ called for Amron to help support this operation. We were able to send radio operators with each of these teams. When they get on site, they call back with their grid coordinates. Me, I was at the fob and running this. So the team would get on site, and this is just like how we would run it in the military. They get on site, call back with the grid. Now we know that they're working. And if we get a call, we can actually call one of those civilian helicopters to be able to go to a location near that injury. This is incredible. And this is all neighbors helping neighbors. This is all volunteer stuff. So, man, it's like a military op. Um, we had PACE plans, the primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency communications if this fails. So there were some places that had cell phone. Well, then you don't need the radio, but not every place does. And maybe as you're traveling, then you're going to get into a dead zone. We had multiple radio, telegraph, telephone operators embedded with the recon teams, the chainsaw, the medical team, so that if they get into a problem, they could call back. We also sent them in teams of at least two vehicles. That way, if one broke down, the other one, they'd be able to self-rescue. And there was a case where that happened. As I mentioned, if we lose comms, if they're gone for a long time, we can know to, hey, we got to start worrying about these folks. They should have been leaving their site. We haven't heard from them. And then we can send somebody to go look at them. But the way that we had control of these teams and oversight, It was impressive to me. So fortunately, we didn't have any injuries. We didn't need to send any helos for pickup. We had some, cuts and bruises, and the nurse back at the FOB, the forward operating base, which is what we called the church, um, yeah, they take care of them. And again, if you don't take care of these little wounds, what in a normal day, you just put a Band-Aid on it and you forget about it. But if you don't clean it out really good in this kind of environment, it's going to get infected. All right, that's the QAM support. And one more on that. We had another team that was located at a different camp. So they were at a longer distance from us. They were on the other side of the Tennessee, North Carolina border. And we had to use high frequency HF radio to be able to talk to that one in the event that the Starlink wasn't working. We had Starlink, so it wasn't necessary. But if you plan on the emergency comms, then you have it. But if you plan on Starlink working, that's when it's not going to work. Kind of like Zoom tonight, I think. All right. In the neighborhood. All right. This is just down the street from Cherry Grove Church. They've got their Halloween decorations up, and life is normal. I'm showing you this for the contrast because this did cause a little bit of a problem with the mindset and the people. There was so many people that still needed critical help, while others thought the disaster is over. Come on, get back to normal life. Now, after disaster, we want to return to a normal life as soon as possible. And we can debate the merits of Halloween or not, but whatever the case, I'm not, I don't feel negative about these folks that had Halloween decorations up when others are suffering. But what needs to happen is the messaging, everybody needs to understand that their neighbors are still in critical. And you know what? Even today in North Carolina, there's people still without um, water, still without power, still in dire situation a year later. And as I was looking for the photos here, I came across this one. A happy life consists not in the absence, but in the mastery of hardships. And I think that helps encapsulate what we want to do with the resiliency pillar. So now contrast this with this house. Well, okay, we got folks on the roof. Not too bad, right? Oh, that's the backside of the house. So contrast that with Halloween decorations, and somebody has to go to this. I don't think they were living inside of it anymore, this particular one, but a lot of folks were living in tents outside of their house because they didn't want to be shipped off to the city and put up in hotels that the government has control of their funding and nobody's there on their property. And here we see the priority of efforts. Um, I I didn't see a lot of government intervention, but they did make it out to the church to put a sign in the yard. So you can see where the priority of efforts. And you might say, well, we're working with rusty metal and people, yeah, get your tetanus shot. Like maybe okay, but let's get food and water before we start on these other ancillary things. Flu, Hep A. All right. Maybe we can talk more about that on the Intel chat, but that's all I'll say for now. If anybody's got a military background, these acronyms are going to make sense to you. I'm not going to give you a lesson in the task organization. Just real quick, in the middle, S2 means intel, 3 is ops, 5 is planning, S6 is comms, and this is the area that we used as our headquarters or tactical operations center. And we slept there because we were working well into the night. And these type of ops, we're not doing any chainsaw work after dark, etc. So the teams are still driving back. They may get back well after dark, um, but we'd sleep there and then wake up in the morning and go back at it. And as we go through the resiliency pillar, I will be talking more about the incident command system and military systems and how to organize to accomplish mission. Here's a ugly picture of our radio setup. And man, it was moving a mile a minute. And for me, I hate to see the rat's nest of wires, but what matters is getting set up, and we got comms. So it's not pretty, but it worked. And we had comms, I'll say that. All right. The hazards, not only did our folks face the, imminent daily hazards of chainsaws and heavy equipment, but if you look hard, you can read it says Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Division of Superfund. This is a hazardous waste site. This is this is hazardous material that's been stored here. Superfund, you can imagine that's like really bad. That's super bad. That's not just a little bit bad. They got a lot of junk here. So as these sites, okay, this is one that was obviously permitted, not exactly held up, but originally permitted. There was a ton of illegal dump sites that we found. There's a lot of mining that goes on, and the hazardous waste that comes from these sites is incredible. And they also mine nuclear material in this area. So the Grindstone Ministries was able to call out um, a person to teach our folks about hazardous material. It's not the 40-hour HAZWOPER that OSHA requires if you're going to be a normal worker in this, but at least we can take care of our folks, make sure that they have the proper PPE, personal protective equipment. And they also brought out folks to be able to test. We did soil tests, and we even brought out a Radiac to make sure that none of these sites were illegal dumping of radioactive material. They fortunately were not, but we just had to check. And that goes to show the level of concern and professionalism that Grindstone Ministries had. Wow, take a look at this precarious position. The map shows you where we're at near Jonesboro, Tennessee. You can find that on a map. And then circle in here on the left. This little road is Little Germany. And this town, it's not even an unincorporated town. We called it Little Germany because it's off the road Little Germany. But they essentially lived on an island because behind them is a steep mountain that is very difficult to get over. You can with an ATV, but these people are isolated because their road and the bridge to get over there was washed out. And they're rural enough, they're not in a big city. You can imagine that they would be overlooked for weeks, if not months. So the 42 people that lived there, nobody, fortunately, was critically injured. But over time, you start running out of food and water, and these chronic medical conditions start to rise up. Now you got a problem, and I'll talk about how they help solve it. But our folks, these are our folks on this precarious goat trail that, well, they carrying the stuff in a backpack. That's how they first got in there. And at the bottom, you see uh, the road that was built. I can talk more about that road, but I put there a note, thank you, Sheriff's Department, because what I think we've seen nationwide is we need to ally with the sheriffs. They've been advocates for the citizens, and we can talk more about that, but that's something I wanted to point out. So Gordon here has his ham radio license, and with a $35 radio was able to call out and find somebody on the other side of this river that got in touch with the sheriff. The sheriff was able to come over with some immediate supplies that they needed, some food and water, and start getting people out of there that needed to get out. And it was through his advocacy. I tell you what, the elected officials weren't going to have that road rebuilt because there's not enough constituents. But, well, as you see in the picture, they did rebuild it. All right. This is the number one thing that I took away was that you plan that nobody's coming to save you. That's your planning assumption. And then if they do, it's a bonus. But now, Gordon here, after 9/11, he shared with me that he's been prepping since 9/11, and he had enough supplies to last a decade for him and his family and the means to defend it. But his whole mentality shifted after this to how can I help my neighbor? And I want to get that message out. Sometimes in the prepper community, we get stuck with that. Oh, I got my guns and ammo, and this what's mine is mine. Well, that may be the case. But if we look at it, how can I help my neighbor? Then we're doing it the right way. We do need the ability to defend ourselves, but all right, there's a picture of us, and he's telling me this story, and man, uh, that was touching. All right. The fellowship, Grindstone Ministries, is a Torah observant organization from sundown on Friday night to sundown on Saturday night is the Sabbath, and they do no work. So even in this time, it's a time of rest. And the believers that are volunteering, this is where they're nourished with food and with God's word. In the lower right, you can see his mug there. And TJ not only started Grindstone Ministries, but Caleb House to help folks that have been in human trafficking, that are human trafficking victims. If you're interested in that, there's calebhouse.org. And I wanted to open this up now to why we need communication. And what I didn't realize is that I can't share the screen while I do this, but I'm going to allow you to unmute and want to either unmute or go ahead and put it in the chat. What are some reasons why this antiquated radio stuff, why might that be important?
Well, when the grid goes down, your cell phone's not going to work. And at least with ham radio, you can still communicate.
That's right. But do you think with all our technology that we're going to get into a situation where the internet and cell are actually down for days on days? Because we've got every phone company has cell on wheels, and they're going to be setting up their temporary cell towers. Again, is this something that we need to think about?
Well, there's places where you don't get cell service, that there are no towers. And yeah, I think it's really important to have ham radio.
Thanks. Let me go to Magesu. You got your hand up. Go ahead, Magesu.
I was looking at military equipment, analog radios as opposed to digital.
Okay.
Uh, Tough to find. Most of them have the GPS tracking, so they're more digital than analog.
Okay. Good, good. And in a later episode, we'll talk more about the specific equipment. This is just a introduction. And Rob from Ohio, please go ahead.
Yeah, you would need communication for
Very
intel
good.
planning, disbursement of supplies and resources. If you can't communicate with your own team, they go out and they're just running about. This way you can have a plan and implement it.
Very good. Those are all good answers. Victoria, and then I'll take it back. Go ahead, Victoria.
If you get some reverb, just let me know. So here in Hawaii, out in the middle of nowhere, if we don't have any power, we get hit with an EMP and all of our electronics don't work. That's what I'm thinking, is that if I have the radio frequency, you can still communicate. And I put mine in a Faraday cage, but short range, consistent communication, I mean, that would be kind of hard, yeah?
Well, it would, and we can talk more about EMP, and that's really neat that you got it in a Faraday cage. Do you have your ham license?
I don't. I actually wanted to know what I know what a ham radio is, but
Hmm.
what is the ham radio heroes from North Carolina, I'm assuming?
He had a
If you could
Baofeng.
expound on that, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Yeah, just a $30 Baofeng. I'll look it up and give you guys that. Go ahead, Rob.
Would sat phones also be a good option to have?
Well, the thing about sat phones, and I'm glad you asked, because it still requires the communication backbone. You're not actually talking from that satellite to that phone to the next phone. What you're doing is that satellite is in communication with the backbone. And for the civilian ones anyway, if the backbone goes down, the internet goes down, you're not going to have satellite phone.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
That's interesting.
Oh, somebody else commented that we can also send emails and text messages with our ham radios. I don't know if you knew that, but you can actually send an email. And I don't want to get too far into it here because I'm running out of time and I want to get to the Q&A. Let me just finish up the slides, and then I wanted to get this message to the group, the resilient path, go camping. So a friend of mine, he said the best thing that you can do for building your self-reliance, your resiliency, is to go camping. And it's a way with your family, especially kids, you make it fun. And the checklists that you do, the skills that you learn, it doesn't have to be grueling like Army boot camp or something. You just make it fun. But that way, if you have to get out of your house, at least you can go camping. So we'll talk more about that as we go on. But I wanted to kind of put that bug in your ear. That's a great way to practice resiliency. And there we go. Now we're to the questions, and I want to put in a shameless plug for my book. There's a lot of things that I didn't talk about with Hurricane Helene and the response, and none of this money goes to me. It goes to Grindstone Ministries. And so you can find this on their website, and or you can use that QR code there. And I will open it up to questions now. Now we're through this isn't just about radio, so it can be anything. All right, go ahead, Rob.
Uh, when you go out and you see things that you've never seen before and experience emotions, how do you handle the emotional toll that going out and seeing all this damage and people, just down? How do you deal with that?
I'm so happy that you asked. One of the things that I'm on about is called psychological first aid. And it's not to make you a behavioral health counselor, but you have the skills to be able to work with people and even yourself. You understand what this is a multifaceted question and probably deserves its own time. Um, but if we take care of each other, neighbors helping neighbors, then most people won't get to the point where they need clinical help. And there's been a few studies, there's been more than a few studies. What they used to do is the folks in response work would all huddle up and they'd all be forced to share their stories and they're rehashing it. And that actually made it worse. So some people want to talk about it, others don't. Some just want a shoulder to cry on. Some people kind of want to isolate. But if everybody's more aware of this, the people that isolate make sure that they know that there's an outlet, that there's a safe place they can go to talk about it, and to also make sure that their health needs, they're getting plenty of water, food, and what's really important is sleep. And so many people during these disasters think that they're helping by going and going and going. And what we learned is you're the same level as being legally drunk with sleep deprivation. So we have to look out for each other and make sure that we're getting proper rest as well. Got another hand up from Christian. Please go ahead. I'm not hearing you.
You're muted, Kristen.
I just unmuted.
All right.
Yeah, my question is, when you first go out to an area, are you working with the local officials? Because the local officials should have evacuation maps. They should have a bunch of this emergency preparedness information already done, at least hopefully. Here in California, Los Angeles, we woefully saw that the Democrats did not have any preparedness. They did not have evacuation routes for the fire victims. There was just no preparedness at all. But hopefully in better states like Tennessee, they
Mhm.
have all the preparation done.
So,
Is that something that you found there?
so unfortunately, this isn't a Democrat Republican issue. Um, it's local by local, and what we found, our folks went to the Emergency Operations Center to make contact, and the way that the government is set up to handle volunteers is an emergency support function 15. And I don't expect, if you do know it, you know it, but we can talk about it, what these things are. But it's 15 is the number for the emergency support function. Within that is the volunteers active during disaster. So what the government saw was over time, like after Katrina, it really started to roll. People want to help. So they're bringing their bags of old shoes and socks and sweats and torn up shirts. And here's these bags that they're dropping off at the government, the Emergency Operations Center. And now this is becoming as big a problem as actually trying to help the people. Also, people showing up. Hey, I'm here to help. All right, well, let's try and leverage this. And the answer that they came up with is called the VOAD. And so our folks at Grindstone approached EOC, and they were absolutely unprepared to integrate volunteer help. And that's why I've become very integrated. And with our, at the county level, it's called the COAD, the Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And I'll be taking over as the chairman in January because I never want to see this happen in our backyard. I want to make sure that the government knows what nonprofits are available. This includes churches, and I would say especially the churches, because they want to help. And ahead of the storm, maybe there's not a lot of they're working 24/7. They have church service. They're not just focused on the disaster, but after the disaster, they're going to want to help. So how can we plug them in? That's through the COAD. But the government has to be very in tune with this, and the people running it have to be, well, in it for the right reasons. Because I've already seen where some of these are simply another NGO, another layer of bureaucracy. So in this specific case, the government was absolutely unprepared to leverage the gifts that nonprofit organizations, the faith-based organizations, were ready to deliver.
And they need to be integrated before any disaster, not during or after.
I don't know if you guys could hear my wife. She says they need to be integrated before. And that's another part. The government has a responsibility to make sure that you're not letting carpetbaggers and people get exploited. So you're wanting to vet the folks that are helping because so many times these people come in under the guise we're here to help, and then they're taking money. They take up front. Okay, we'll fix your roof. Just give us half, and then they never come back. And we're seeing that here in this county after Helene.
And that doctor that in Tennessee, they were trying to recruit volunteers from the grindstone,
Yeah.
but they got no resources. They just want.
All right. My wife wants me to share another story with you. So, and that's another reason that I wanted to get involved with this because I see so many people that are just taking funds on the government side, on the nonprofit side, and even the so-called faith side. And one of them, and I'm going to say their name, it was the Chaplain Corps, the International Chaplain Corps. And our folks are driving around and they saw the trailer and there's a couple of cases of water out front, and they went in and they said, well, the lady that's heading it up says, "Hi, I'm Dr. So and so. Like, you have to know she's got her PhD. She mentioned that more than a couple times. She's a chaplain, and she's got this list of needs. And why don't you come back tomorrow and we can work on that." So our folks go back and she's got the form. If you just sign up with my organization, then we can share that list. And like we got our own. We're doing our own thing. If you want to work together, this can be synergistic. But all she had was a trailer, one admin assistant, and really wasn't bringing anything to the fight. So those are the people that I want to leverage. How can we actually get our money's worth? All right, we got more hands up. I'm going to go to Victoria in Hawaii. You're not on. There you go.
Took me a second, sorry. Um, so I've lived in North Carolina before and through disaster situations, and I can super appreciate, you know, the churches coming together and uniting and people, community, because that's really what it's about. It's about your community and getting back on your feet. How would you know who not to trust? And that's one of my questions. I have a whole slew of them, but I think that's the biggest thing is when somebody's going through a traumatic situation, and I know people who've actually been through Helene and other disasters. How do you know who not to trust, who not to go with? And we've even seen recently, you know, people have been coming out about the Lahaina fires and that people were trafficked and forced to do things
Oh no.
for basic needs, for gas, for water, for food. And when you're in that situation, and I'm thankful, so super thankful that you're here and sharing this information with us. And there's so much we're going to learn from you, I'm sure. But what would be like the first thing that you would advice that you would give somebody in that situation? You know, you've just been through this traumatic, intense, and you need, I mean, basics, right? You need food, you need water, you need shelter. You don't have any of that, and you have these people who say they're helping. How do you know who you don't trust?
So this vetting process happens ahead of time, and how I do it is, um, well, at the meetings, and then you get a feel for people, and then you go and sit next to them, go to their office and have a chat with them and find out what they're all about, and then getting to know these people. And the best way to get to know people is eating with them, if you can get to that point. I mean, it's a lot of nonprofits, so I'm probably going to get fat after this, but
What
getting
about
to
the
know the people.
victims? The
What about the
victims who were,
victims?
yeah, the victims who have just gone through it. Because I mean,
Ah,
people who haven't been through a natural disaster, who haven't had to rebuild their life, who caught off guard, just weren't expecting it. Because we're seeing a lot of
mhm.
natural disasters in places we're not used to seeing them.
So from the
So for,
victims'
yes,
standpoint,
thank you.
I don't think there's any way at that moment, but what you should do is be plugged in with your community. I would suggest through your church, your faith-based organization, and that your faith-based organizations are plugged into the VOAD so that it's kind of a tiered level. So you're trusting that your church is going to take care of you, and the church is plugged in, and they'll find the resources that are available after the storm. But but if you're just a person and you're not plugged in, and somebody says, "Hey, I can fix your roof," hey, great, thanks, please go ahead. So if you're not plugged in, then I think you're going to be a lot more vulnerable. We've got a few more hands here, and Mageso has had his hand up, and then Rosemary. Mageso, please go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of schools and churches are used during disasters. And then we see communities that go through disaster after disaster after disaster every year. My thing is, I don't understand why townships, counties, or boroughs don't have distribution centers already set up that are already stocked with food and medical supplies and things like that. It seems like when the disasters are occurring, people are flying in food, they're driving in medicine, they're doing all these things, and there's no focal point or central point of access. Have you found that in your experience when you went to North Carolina or Tennessee, that nothing was already there that people could go to?
That was my experience, that it was disorganized, and there were people that experienced the government taking the donated supplies, saying, we own this and this is going to go to a centralized warehouse and we'll be the ones distributing it. I'm not sure the legality of that, but that happened. And so some of these organizations, like the Red Cross, they've got a mandate to be doing this. But we can't just say the Red Cross, because each one, there's a local chapter, and how are they doing it may be different from another local chapter, and then that may be varied from the national. So each of these is local, and these distribution centers, man, I tell you what, anytime we see the government trying to run something like the bureaucracy involved. So what I'm trying to do is move off trying to get the government to be the one to do this. And I think about back to the pictures of the Great Depression, people lining up in soup lines. That wasn't FEMA. FEMA wasn't invented yet. These were churches. And if you're an atheist and you have to listen to the gospel, well, is that worth a meal to you? Or um, so, that's where my mind is at. And it should be neighbors helping neighbors and not just expecting the handout. With this, I look at Thailand after the Boxer tsunami, and I've been to Thailand many times, and one of the towns was absolutely wiped out after the tsunami. And then you went back next year, and it's nicer than it was. There's no FEMA, there's no handout. These are neighbors helping neighbors rebuilding their communities because they know they have to, because there's not going to be a handout. So about the distribution centers, um, my suggestion is that we try and put it down to the grassroots level and at the faith-based, well, down to the churches predominantly. If there's other entities that want to take that role, then I support it. Um, but we got to get off the teat, because FEMA is downsizing. They're not going to be coming to the rescue. They're not the big cavalry like everybody thinks they are. The weight's going to be on the shoulders of the states. The states are going to be overwhelmed, and it's going to be down to the counties looking at other counties. And that's another thing that I'm working with our communications, making sure that we're able to talk to our emergency operations centers, counties around us. If we need help or if they need help, we can help each other. And then down to the churches, setting up networks within the churches. Some organizations are much better. The Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, have an incredible emergency preparedness system. The Baptists, the Mennonites, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And you know what? If these folks only want to help themselves or that circle, well, that's a burden off of everybody else. If everybody's taking care of themselves, then the problem's solved. So anyway,
I
I
was
know that.
thinking,
Go ahead.
I was thinking along the lines of neighborhood,
Yes,
community, and then county. Three
very good.
tiers.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. We got some more hands. Rosemarie, please go ahead.
First of all, for all of the information, it's very enlightening to hear about some of the things that are being done in these situations. My question is, I know that in some cases it's not feasible, but what about the use of whole house generators where they have them? Or is it applicable for these disaster areas where these recurrences keep happening to promote the purchase and use of generators. I know I have a whole house generator, and I was just wondering about the applicability.
Well, absolutely. If you got a whole house generator, you're set. Now, the limiting factor is the fuel for it. And I also suggest, in addition to that, you get some backup with solar. Maybe it doesn't have to power your whole house, but at some point, it might be really hard to get the fuel for your whole house generator. But that'll get you by until you get to that next step. But I think that's a great solution. And I'm glad that you have that. Next, we'll go to Rob in Ohio.
Yeah. Is there any place you can get training on how, what to do after this and how to help? Because the worst thing we could probably do is just show up and expect to help and not have any skills or abilities to contribute. So we'd become a weight.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I don't know if Ashley prompted you, but that's exactly what the resiliency pillar is all about.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right.
I look forward to your lessons.
Okay, thank you. Great. Thanks for, we don't have any more hands up.
There is.
Oh, we do have a hand up and a heart. Oh, thank you, Victoria. Please go ahead.
Last question, I promise.
It's okay.
So I know you talked briefly, well, I'm going to say two questions. One, when can we expect another resiliency? I'm guessing that's signing up on the website under the resiliency pillar for your sessions. Yeah.
So
Okay.
at this time we're planning quarterly, but I
Okay.
don't know, maybe you can twist Ashley's arm or something. But quarterly is what we have established right now. What's your second half?
When you're coming in after a disaster, you have things that you cannot unsee. And other people that you're working with who've also unseen these things. How do you address that, or how do you process it? I mean, yeah, therapy, and I recommend EMDR, honestly. In the moment, how do you support the people around you? And if you don't mind, maybe how did you personally process that information? Tragedy.
Oh, my wife wants to chime in on how.
You talk about the your eating food bar.
No, I'll share a story after we go off the recording.
Okay.
Actually, let's keep that whole thing off the recording, but I'll be happy to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, what would you recommend we do for people in that situation? We're out in the community, we're, buddied up, we're helping, rebuild. How would you support those people emotionally that you're like arm to arm with, and you see things that you can't unsee? How do you support? Is there anything you would recommend in supporting them?
So I'll go back to the psychological first aid, the PFA. I'm a big fan of that. But the truth is that it's not rocket science, or you don't need a degree in this. These are people that we love. And how do you love them? And people respond to love in different ways. And some people want to be hugged and some people don't want to be touched. So who is it that you're working with, and how can you best reach them? And you're going to know that better than the psychologist. And the medications, I maybe there's a place for that at some really high level cases. But I think if we actually love our neighbors, then most people won't need to get to the medication stage.
Thank you.
You can go to the intel now.
All right.
Off recording.
Oh, we got one more and then we're going to the intel, but I want to.
I swear
Go
this
ahead.
is my last question.
I'm happy to take the question. Go ahead.
Okay, since we don't know where the tragedies may happen, isn't it best to also prepare around us personally, so we've got a base to build from? Like, get involved with your church, get them involved, first aid, food supply, maybe a place of shelter, since most churches are built in a pretty decent place, same as schools.
Yep.
Instead of waiting, of course you can go elsewhere to help people, but help yourself first, and that way you can help other people. Am I
Like the
wrong on
oxygen
that?
mask.
What's that? Oh.
Like the oxygen mask. Can I put you on camera?
No.
My wife wants to answer this, but she doesn't want to go on camera. But I listen to her. Go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, I grew up in a third world country. I grew up in the Philippines, so we're like declared the disaster capital of the world. And so growing up there, you understand that anything can happen at any time. So we had go bags, um, and we have food supply for an adequate amount of time. What it was is that if every individual in every family can survive for a certain period of time, then it's easier for you to be able to help your neighbors. If you have food, water, and medication for yourself, then you're not a burden to your neighbor. And that's the mindset that we need to um, cement in our brains.
Yeah, thanks for
So
asking
what you're
that. That's
saying
a
is they
go ahead.
don't be a victim. Be a
Correct.
person with a plan
Mhm.
and hopefully help with other people then. All right.
Yeah, not unnecessarily. If you got hurt because a tree fell on you, then there's nothing you can do about that. Although think about where you're at
Mm-hmm.
and the churches. I'm glad you brought that up because it's about community, and as Mageso said, from the individual to the family to the neighborhood and then up to the county. So, but being plugged in, and the whole thing is about being resilient. And the reason I called this resiliency instead of the preparedness channel or something, because the mentality for prepping now is by and large, how much stuff do I have on my shelf? I've got canned goods and I've got meals for 10 years and enough bullets to defend it. And that's kind of the prepper mentality. Well, it takes way more than that. And I don't care what stuff you have on the shelf. If you haven't trained, if you don't know um, how to use all this, and if you don't train on survival skills, you think you're going to have it, but what if your house was that one that got washed away? Now, everything you've been prepping for 10 years, but if you have a resiliency mindset, then you're going to be able to adapt and overcome.
Good. Thank you.
All right. I can't leave Magay, so
Mhm.
I'm so happy you guys have these questions. I want to get to the intel round, but I don't want to stop the questions prematurely. Magay, so please go ahead.
Yeah, it's not so much a question, but in the early times of the Hawaiian culture is when you owned your home, let's say, you grew enough food for your family and to the neighbor to your right, to your left, behind you, and in front of you. And they did the same, and everything would build out upon each other. So with that mentality, say on survival, at least within a community house structure, you can have the same mentality. Have enough food for yourself in the four directions, immediate four directions, and each one builds in the same way. So eventually there's overlap, but eventually you hit the whole island, if you would, in our case.
What you call Ohana?
Ohana, well, taking care of the family, yes.
That's right. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more than just your blood relative, isn't it? Well,
Yes, it is.
all right. Thank you
So
so
thank you.
much. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go to the intel round. I've got a script to read. Let me pull that up.
You
Oh,
stop recording.
thank you. I'm so glad my technical assistant is here. She said, stop recording.
I do believe that you finish with your script and then end recording.
Okay. Thank you. Now I got to find it. Are you guys still seeing me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Shortcomings, Pledge of Allegiance. Members Q&A. Members, please get ready to participate in the famous state-to-state intel round. Okay, there's the script. All right. Wait for it.
And you already knew that.
Oh, you want to talk about the food bar?
I'm still recording.
You're still recording.
You know what? I don't know. Maybe
Maybe another time.
no.